Hey up everyone, I'm going to be working on this border collie painting today. So I'm going to be showing you how to do black fur using acrylics, but also I'm going to be showing you how I do the transition between the black fur and the white markings. As you can see, he's got white on his muzzle and a blaze going up his face, and I'm going to be showing you how I do the transition between his black areas and then white areas as well. So I start off by just blocking in the paint to cover paper up. I'm just using straight black for this because the reference photo that I was using, you can't see all these different colours. I know some people have got this thing against black, but if I can't see all these other different colours going on, then why should I paint all these other different colours? I paint what I see at end of day. So I'm just using straight old black. I mean, I am doing another dog at the minute. I'm painting another dog as I speak, and that dog's got all different colours going on in it. But in the reference photo for this one, it were just black. There's a few slight ochre tones in your highlights, but otherwise it's just black. So I'm not going to start messing around with all different colours. I just use black and that's it. You do get some photos where you can see, lots of colours going on in black dogs, but then you get other photos where you can't really see all these different colours going on. And anybody that tries to tell you that they can see all these different colours is either fibbing, or they're just trying to be pretentious, or they've got multicoloured specs on. That's all I can say about it, basically. I mean, I can look at my actual, black dog and not see all these colours going on. I just see black and grey and what have you when I look at my own black dog in the flesh. And this is in no way saying that you shouldn't add colours to your black paintings. Any black subjects that you're painting, black dogs, black horses, black anything. If you want to add colours to it or mix your black using various colours, then do just that. But there's no rule, I don't think, saying that you must absolutely do that. If you want to just use straight black, just use straight black. I mean, I tend to do that anyway, and then I tend to add my colours. If I can see colours going on, I tend to add them afterwards, in the later layers. At the minute, you don't have to worry about any detail. Just get your paint onto paper and cover it all up. Might take a couple of layers to get it all covered up properly and get rid of any lighter bits and any, translucency. Make it nice and opaque before you move on to your next stage. And next stage is to start adding a bit of definition. I start painting in direction at growth of the dog's hair. I'm just adding some extra blacks where he's darker and he's got shadows going on. And then I add a little bit of white where light's going to be hitting his coat. But I only add a little bit at this point because I don't want to be going too light too soon. It's always important to move lighter in your tones really gradually. A lot of people wonder how I manage to get the effects that I do in acrylic. People think acrylic's really hard to get details and what have you. And all I can say is that secret is just multiple layers. I mean, the beauty of acrylics is that it dries quickly, so you can just keep putting more layers on top and you don't have to wait for it to dry or out like that. And the secret with each layer as you're going up in tone is that you just take it a little bit more easy with each tone because you don't want to be covering up the layers underneath completely. So you just want to be taking it a little bit more easy each time, and when you get to your final highlights, it's just your tiny little bits on top of all the rest, and don't be covering up all your work underneath it. You can see a little bit of definition appearing now. He's got brows and cheekbones and what have you. So a little skip forward, you can see that I've painted his nose and his muzzle and his eyes. So we're going to move along with black parts for his face now, and the way that the black parts for his face blend with the white parts for his face. And I'm showing you my number 3 rigger brush and what I do with it in order to do my next strokes, which is to flatten it. See, when I dip it into paint, I'll keep it flat and just wiggle it from side to side slightly, so it keeps the bristles nice and flat. And then I can use both the corners on that flattened end in order to do my next strokes, which are going to be focusing a lot more on hair texture. And what I've done is I've chosen a tone that's in between the darks of the shadows and the lights of the highlights, and I'm going to add strokes on that borderline between the two to blend them into each other. I'm also going to use some darker paint to add some hair texture in your lighter areas. Just make sure that you pay attention to direction of growth of the hair when you're doing this stage. You will get darker lines bleed into your bands of highlights because you get little partings in hair and things like that going on, and you'll also get lighter hairs bleeding into your darker areas as well. This just makes it look a lot more authentic and a lot more like real fur, because real fur is not perfect. It does clump up and have little flyaway hairs and things like that going on. Highlights on this dog are not too pronounced. I mean, when this painting were ordered, it were beginning of January, which is middle of winter for us in UK. And the client took the reference photos at the time, so at that time of year, our sun is really low in the sky. So the light were, a little bit rubbish, to be honest. And even though there's some highlights on the fur, they're not pronounced. And this dog's got like really black fur as well. You get some collies and they don't have such a black coat, and in some of they're prone to bleaching and looking a rusty colour. But then others have got really jet black coat, and this dog is one of them, got a really jet black kind of coat. One of the reasons why you're not really seeing any brown tones and things like that you often see in Border Collie portraits. Now you can see I'm going to start bringing them highlights out a little bit more. Just take it easy with your strokes when you're working up in tone, because you don't want to be losing everything that's underneath. It's what you can see peeping through from underneath that gives it all depth. I'm also going to work a little bit on that transition between that black fur and that white fur on that blaze. You can see there's darker hairs that bleed into edge of that white blaze, and then there's white hairs from that blaze that stick out into black areas. You often get a little bit of a line where it turns completely white. That basically is where the pigment stops. That's where the dog is like truly white, and you'll probably get pink skin under there. And then when you get a mixture of white and black hairs, that's when you've got your pigment on your skin. If you pick the hair up there on an actual dog, the skin will be pigmented underneath that section, but there will be no pigment on the area where it's fully white. That defined line's not going to be evident on every single dog, every single collie even. They're all going to be slightly different on how the edge of the blaze looks against the whatever other colour they are. They might be a chocolate and white or whatever, or a blue merle, or a blue, or a lilac, or whatever. But they're all going to look a little bit different along edge at blaze. Some of them can look a little bit more abrupt, and some of them have got really long white hairs that come right out into your actual darker colour. And then others have got shorter hairs, and then you've got mixtures of dark hairs and white hairs. And some of them have not got so much of that. So it's just a case of paying attention to your reference photo and seeing what's going on that individual dog in your reference photo. So I'm working up in tone again, and you can see that I'm being increasingly sparing with these strokes because I don't want to lose everything that's going on underneath. In reality, there's only so many of the individual hairs that would catch the light fully anyway, and they would only catch it for a small part of the actual length, especially if the hair shaft is curved. And this is how highlights work when you get light shining on fur. So just keep working them strokes until it looks the way you want it to look. The fur on this dog's more on smooth and sleek side than on my white fur tutorial where Oslo, the white dog, had a wiry type of coat. So the strokes won't be as messy, as crisscrossy as they were, but I noticed there is a little bit of crisscrossing going on. So just keep that to a minimum. Some Border Collies do have a really sleek coat, and then you probably not really get any crisscrossy, unruly hairs out like that going on. And then other Border Collies can be a little bit more woolly, and then you can get a little bit more messiness going on. I think like this dog's sort of like got an in-betweeny kind of coat. He is very rough coated, but his coat's not really sleek. I mean, they tend to have shorter coats on their heads anyway. Border Collies have short hair on the faces, so it is a little bit more smooth and sleek, but it starts thickening up a little bit on the forehead, near the ears and what have you. And the hair shafts on the brows also tend to just poke outwards because of the shape of the face in that area. So they can look like they need to cross in front of hairs that are going on behind them on the flat part of head. This can obviously depend on what angle the dog were photographed from, and the kind of dog and the shape of its face and the kind of fur that it's got as well. So I'm back onto that borderline between black and white. Just keep alternating between blacks and whites really on this section until it looks how I want it to. There's more whites bleeding into black in certain areas. There's a section in that middle bit where it's not so much. You tend to get a lot of stray hairs from that white blaze in between eyes. There's a change in air direction there where it comes off at top at muzzle and then it fans out, goes up onto head and then down onto cheekbones and underneath eyes and what have you. There's also a few more stray hairs on that little bit below that blue eye where you get some white going up onto that cheekbone a little bit. And that can cause quite a lot of stray hairs to fan out from edge of the white markings into that black area near inner corner at the eyes. Back onto highlights, and I've started adding a little bit of yellow ochre to these now just to warm them up very slightly. There's not really a lot of warmth showing in them in reference photo, so I didn't go overboard with this. You'll often get more highlights on top of head because obviously the top of the head is facing towards your sky, so there's going to be a lot of light reflecting on the top of head. Just like the top of the brows as well, you tend to get a lot more highlights. And then just adding more highlights to all parts of face that have got a lot of light hitting them. It tends to be parts of face that are facing upwards, so you've got your bottom of your eye socket there and then you've got your cheekbone. There's some hair that comes down in front of the base of ear that always catches a bit of light. Always make sure that you preserve them black areas and some of your work that's underneath, even them highlighted areas, you know, to retain your depth. If you do go a little bit overboard with your highlights, you can come back in with some darker paint again and just put some darker strokes in. Darken it up a little bit and then you can start going back lighter again. This is pretty easy to do with acrylic with its quick drying time. Alternative is to just glaze the area a bit darker again and then you can just work back up in tone again. And then you come in last with your lightest highlights, which really do finish it off. Just be really sparing with these, you don't want to go over the top with these. You're only going to get the tiniest flecks that reflect these brightest highlights. Less is definitely more in this case. It really brings out the structure of the face. Add a few more little stray white hairs here and there. Just soften that transition between that black and that white. If you do some strokes and they're a little bit too bright, I tend to just dab them a little bit with my finger and it just tones them down a little bit. I sometimes use that finger dabbing technique to get certain effects as well. I've used it to get certain skin textures on things like brachycephalic breeds, which you'll probably see in upcoming tutorials actually. You'll see me coming in with darks again just to get a little bit more definition. And I think that looks like it's just about done. So here's the finished painting and I'm quite pleased with how that turned out. I'll show you the full painting featuring Marley and Oslo, who were in a previous tutorial, and the little studies beneath them. If you've enjoyed this tutorial, please consider subscribing because I'll be doing further tutorials, and maybe click that notification bell so that you don't miss them and you're notified as soon as they're uploaded. And maybe give this video a like and a comment. Any constructive feedback is greatly appreciated. And I'll see you in my next video. Bye!